Welcome to Defense Watch. This week, President Barack Obama announced plans for a phased withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan due more to political than military imperatives. This marks the end of the military surge of 33,000 additional U.S. troops sent beginning December 2009. It also probably marks the shift from counterinsurgency to counterterrorism, that is, intelligence-led special force operations and increased drone attacks. It is likely that after the killing of Osama bin Laden, the focus will now be on Pakistan. In other words, AFPAC turning to PACAF. Everyone in the US, President Obama downwards, to including General David Petraeus, has warned Pakistan to act against terrorist sanctuaries on its soil. But Pakistan is still a key partner for any successful and responsible exit from Afghanistan. In the words of General Kayani, Pakistan must appear to be part of the solution and not the problem. The next phase is consolidation of gains, a political settlement, and creating a credible Afghan national security force. How will all this impact on India? To discuss these issues, our Ambassador Chinmaya Garekhan, a permanent representative at the United Nations, G. Bakshi, Major General, a noted counterinsurgency expert, and C. Raja Mohan of the Center for Policy Research. Mr. Garekhan, you heard Barack Obama's speech on the 22nd of June on the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. What struck you in this speech?
This is a speech not by President of America. It is a speech by the candidate, Mr. Obama. The speech is geared entirely for his political campaign for re-election. If he was speaking as president, really, I think he would have preferred to draw down fewer number of troops. If he was speaking entirely as a candidate, then he would have preferred to announce a larger withdrawal of troops. But he had to strike a balance. And since he's now already in a re-election mode, he has done, I think, a fairly good balance between his two imperatives and opted for the option that he has. In effect, what he has done is announce success or victory and decided to pull out, as you say, in a phased manner. He has also talked about reconciliation in his speech. So I think all in all,
overall, it's, according to you, in your assessment, it's a balanced and well-considered drawdown in consonance with what the political imperatives for a presidential election are.
That's right.
Raja, now apparently what struck me in this speech was that he is now no longer talking about trying to make Afghanistan a perfect place, and he's also talking about in time of rising debt and hard economic times, $1 trillion. So what does this mean?
Absolutely, and I think there was a sentence in the speech where he said, look, the time has come to do nation building at home. All this talk that the US will go far from home, try and save other countries, build other countries, that whole phase, the post-Cold War euphoria, the sense of American strength, that is dissipated. It doesn't matter whether he was a candidate or not. The fact is, the war in Afghanistan has become unsustainable because of the domestic political conditions.
And the cost.
Yeah. So the cost, for example, I mean, it's $2 billion a week. That the sense that traditionally you had the Republicans, at least were supportive of the external adventures, while the Democrats were generally more squeamish about it. But today Republicans who are coming to the issue from the notion of a budget deficit, the need to cut budget deficit. So I think the domestic consensus for an extended involvement in Afghanistan has come down. And the president is taking advantage of it.
This is not a band-aid job, is it?
No, this is not a band-aid job. And I think, as I said, bring the wars to a responsible end. The time to end too much of foreign involvement has come. America must build itself. So he's basically saying, look,
so America is not going away in a hurry.
It's going to reduce its footprint. It'll significant withdrawal does not mean it'll completely be out of the picture. What we have is two phases. One, between now and 2014, when the US combat role will come to an end, what does the United States do with a reasonably significant military footprint out there? Second aspect, what does the US do after 2014? And both these issues, I think there is a lot of ambiguity which you didn't mention.
So on this military footprint part, it is quite apparent that the US president went more for the political reasons for withdrawal, as Ambassador Ghauri Khan said, rather than military reasons, because many of the military commanders, including the Joint Chairman Chiefs of Staff Mike Mullen, said we could have stayed longer, we could have kept these troops, kept the pressure of the surge, and obtained better results. So, assuming that this is the way it's going to work out, how does this drawdown look like to you, and where will this take the counterinsurgency campaign?
So what we are seeing primarily is a transition from a counter-insurgency phase to more of a nuanced counter-terrorist role that we are going to have. From the purely military point of view, the fact of the matter is that the recent surge has been more of a success than is generally given credit for. And how it has happened is whether by design or by default. The simple fact of the matter is that when they said they are going to withdraw 2011, the Pakistanis and the Taliban generally took it that, they are going to cut costs and run. And therefore the mistake that the Taliban made as a guerrilla force is that in 2009, in Helmand and Marja, in 2010 in Kandahar, it has stood up and fought, which is a cardinal mistake any guerrilla force can make in the face of a concerted offensive. It should have rolled with a punch, and this is what we all expected. I mean, all counter-insurgency. But the fact is, it has stood up and fought and taken casualties. One, sir.
What are the casualties?
The casualties, sir, they are said to have suffered about 2,000 killed and about 4,000 have been captured. But these figures have to be taken with a pinch of salt, because it is now understood that out of the 4,000 captured, about 80% have turned out to be civilians. So in the first rush, what is more significant is the command and control attrition that they have been able to inflict.
I believe some 700 middle-level
some 700 middle-level commanders, to the extent with the special subject of special forces operations, who are going for the second tier and the top tier leadership, and Osama bin Laden's Operation Neptune.
So, besides the success, what about the credibility of the Afghan National Security Forces? Where are they in relation to what Raja mentioned as one of the key objectives is the transition, is to hand over to the Afghan National Security Forces?
The Afghanization, like Vietnamization was the key in Vietnam, Afghanization of this campaign would be critical, which way, whether success or failure would be defined by the success of Afghanization. And it is here that we in India feel that the ANA has been under-resourced and not right-sized. Let me explain. The pre-Soviet era invasion Afghan army was supposed to be 230,000. When the Soviets left in 1989, they had raised the Afghan army to the strength of 550,000, 5 corps.
So what is the strength today?
The strength today is going to be 171,000, and ultimately they hope to bring it to by 2014 to about 220,000 or thereabouts. But the fact is, we still feel that this is, given the size of the country, the terrain and the quantum of the opposition, you are under-resourcing this.
And yet, many Afghans who I met recently have said that they are incapable of operating independently. They will need either a German soldier or a British soldier or an American soldier as buddy. What about the police? What is the
police? Actually, the Afghan army has done far better than the police as far as its public image is concerned. Because the fact of the matter is, though we are calling it Afghan, the Pashtun content is very low. And it is largely, the Tajiks and the Hazaras, etc., who are the Uzbeks, who are still this thing. The good feature is that these ethnicities, the Farsi ones, lend themselves better to militarization and serving in barrack life. The Pashtun is a good guerrilla fighter, but he's a notoriously bad, regular soldier.
And I believe some element of the Air Force is also being created.
They have an Afghan Air Corps, which will primarily be a helicopter force. And once again, it is this component which will have to be strengthened. The amazing fact is that it is General Kayani who's been trying to dictate the size of this force, the composition of this force. He wants no armor, he wants no artillery, he wants no air power to be given to the Afghans.
And one problem with the police, before I come to you, Ambassador, is that there are too many trainers, too many different countries involved in training the police, and they've been unable to decide whether or not these people, the police, should be trained either for a counterinsurgency role or a gendarme role. Now, Ambassador, one of the key ingredients of Barack Obama's speech was on a political settlement. Now, I know you've written copiously about a regional framework and the regional compact, but we'll come to that later. Right now, we want to discuss how successful, if at all, is this process of reconciliation and reintegration, because this is part of the larger political framework and power sharing. What's your take on that?
I think reintegration has done little better than reconciliation. Reconciliation has really not got off the ground. There have been contacts between Mullah Omar's brother-in-law, this Sadiq Agha, and the Americans, mediated by the Germans of all the people. They met in Qatar, they met in Dubai, they also met in Germany. But from what one understands, these have been at a very preliminary level. These are more like talks about talks than any substantive negotiations about reconciliation and Taliban coming into the mainstream. As we all know, they laid down so-called red lines, the 3 red lines. The respect the constitution, several links with Al-Qaeda.
But Master, although Hillary Clinton, when she spoke at the Asia Foundation, mentioned these 3 conditions, I heard Barack Obama's speech in London in the famous speech that he made. These 3 conditions were not mentioned.
Well, he has mentioned these 3 conditions yesterday in his address. But in fact, the speech at Asia Foundation, or Asia Society rather, which Mrs. Clinton made, there in fact she made it very clear that these 3 are really objectives to be achieved at the end of the process, and they are not necessarily preconditions. But Obama yesterday reinserted them as more or less preconditions now.
Separating from Al-Qaeda, giving up
renouncing violence and respect the constitution.
Respect the constitution. So your take is that the reconciliation process is in a very preliminary stage.
No, you see, the thing is that Americans want to get out, and they are looking for some face-saving formula. It's for them the real thing which will save their face and give them some kind of a prestige, if you like, or prevent a loss of prestige.
But interestingly, Robert Gates only last week said he did not believe Taliban will engage in serious talks. And in my own conversations with Afghan experts only last month, they said to me that do not take this seriously, because the Taliban know exactly what's happening, and even if there is an agreement, that agreement will not be implemented. So,
see, Taliban, like Mr. Karzai, are after all Afghans, and they are very shrewd people, and they know which side the bread is buttered. So they will do their maximum to exploit the situation, the weaknesses of the Americans. They will ride out this time until 2014, I think, but they are not really going to give up their ideology.
Raja, President Karzai was in Pakistan this month, in fact, and there they formed a joint commission on reconciliation. What does that mean?
Look, I think we got to accept it. None of this, what they're doing, all the major actors, that is Kabul, Washington and Islamabad, what they do, everyone is playing a game